The parched air swallowed Zara Holloway's desperate prayers as she staggered across the scorching Nevada desert, her 9-month-old daughter Emma whimpering weakly against her hip. 3 days without proper water had left Zara's lips cracked and bleeding, her once vibrant green eyes now sunken into hollows of exhaustion. "Just a little further, my sweet girl," Zara whispered, adjusting the thin cotton blanket to shield Emma's delicate skin from the relentless July sun of 1873. Her own dress, once a cheerful blue calico, hung in tatters around her slender frame. The memory of flames consuming her small homestead flashed through her mind along with the echo of the raiders' laughter as they rode away, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and her precious child. The distant mountains wavered in the heat, seeming no closer than they had yesterday. Zara's parched throat constricted as she forced herself to keep moving, one agonizing step after another. The water skin she'd salvaged from the ruins had been empty since dawn, and Emma hadn't nursed properly in over a day. "Water's coming, my love," she lied, her voice barely audible. "Mama promises." A faint sound caught her attention, the distant rhythm of hoofbeats. Panic surged through her veins. Were the raiders returning to finish what they'd started? With no place to hide in the vast expanse, Zara clutched Emma tighter and quickened her pace, ignoring the blisters that had erupted across her feet and the dizziness threatening to overtake her. The sound grew closer. Zara's knees buckled beneath her, and she sank to the ground, curling protectively around Emma. If death was coming, she would face it, shielding her daughter to the very end. "Madam," a deep voice called out, not the harsh tones of the raiders, but something steadier, concerned. Zara forced her head up, squinting against the blinding sun. A tall figure on horseback approached slowly, leading a second horse behind him. As he drew closer, the silhouette took shape: a broad-shouldered man in a dust-covered denim shirt and worn leather vest. "Madam, you all right?" he asked, dismounting with fluid grace despite his imposing size. His face was partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but Zara could make out a strong jaw darkened with several days' worth of stubble. "Please," she managed, her voice a painful rasp. "My baby." The stranger knelt beside her, concern etched across features weathered by sun and wind. Up close, Zara could see eyes the color of a summer storm, gray-blue and intensely focused as they took in her condition. "Name's Nathan Drake," he said, reaching for the canteen at his hip. "Looks like you two are in a bad way." Zara watched his hands, large but surprisingly gentle, as he uncorked the canteen and held it toward her cracked lips. "The baby first," she insisted, her maternal instinct overriding even her desperate thirst. Nathan nodded, understanding immediately. He carefully helped her position Emma to take small sips of the life-giving water. The baby's weak crying subsided as she drank. "Easy now," he cautioned as Zara finally took her own turn with the canteen. "Too much too fast will make you sick." The water was warm but tasted sweeter than any spring water Zara had ever known. She forced herself to sip slowly, though every cell in her body screamed for more. "Thank you," she whispered when she'd had enough to ease the worst of her thirst. "We wouldn't have lasted another day." Nathan's eyes swept the desolate landscape. "Where you headed? Nearest settlement's 40 miles west. Anywhere away from here," Zara answered, unable to keep the tremble from her voice. "Our home. Raiders came 3 days ago, took everything, burned what they couldn't carry." Something hardened in Nathan's expression, a flash of anger quickly controlled. "You've been walking all this time?" "With a little one," Zara nodded, exhaustion washing over her now that the immediate crisis of thirst had been addressed. "Got a camp set up about 2 miles back," Nathan said, standing to his full height. "Not much, but there's shelter and more water. Think you can make it if I carry the little one?" Emma had already dozed off, soothed by the water and momentary rest. Zara hesitated only briefly before nodding. This stranger had already saved their lives with his water. She had little choice but to trust him further. "I'm Zara," she offered as Nathan carefully took Emma into his arms, cradling the infant with surprising competence. "Zara Holloway, And this is Emma." Nathan's expression softened as he looked down at the sleeping baby. "Pleased to meet you both, though wish it were under better circumstances." He helped Zara to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. "Think you can ride? My horse Duster's gentle as they come." The journey to Nathan's camp passed in a blur for Zara, who struggled to stay conscious atop the steady gelding. Nathan walked alongside, leading both horses with Emma secure in one arm. The simple kindness of this act, giving up his own comfort to ensure hers registered even through Zara's exhaustion. His camp, when they reached it, was indeed modest but meticulously organized. A small canvas tent stood beneath the sparse shade of a twisted juniper tree, while a tiny spring bubbled from between rocks nearby, a desert miracle that explained his choice of location. "Been tracking a herd of wild mustangs," Nathan explained as he helped Zara dismount. "Didn't expect to find folks out this way." He settled her in the shade and returned Emma to her arms before busying himself with camp tasks. Zara watched him through half-closed eyes as he built up a small fire and set coffee to boil. His movements were economical, practiced those of a man accustomed to fending for himself in harsh conditions. Yet there was a gentleness to him that belied his rugged exterior, evident in how carefully he had handled Emma and in the concerned glances he cast their way. "Drink this," he said sometime later, offering her a tin cup of broth. "Need to get your strength back slow and steady." The savory liquid revived her further, and by nightfall Zara felt human again, though deeply weary. Nathan had given up his tent without argument, insisting he preferred sleeping under the stars anyway. As darkness enveloped the desert, Zara lay inside the canvas shelter with Emma nestled against her, listening to the soft sounds of their rescuer moving around the camp. "Thank you," she whispered into the night, though she knew he couldn't hear. "For your water and so much more." Morning arrived with the scent of coffee and bacon, rousing Zara from the deepest sleep she'd had since the raid. Emma was already awake, cooing softly beside her. The baby's usually pale cheeks had regained some color, and her blue eyes looked brighter. Outside the tent, Nathan crouched by the fire, his attention focused on the skillet before him. He glanced up as Zara emerged with Emma on her hip. "Morning," he greeted, his voice warm. "Figured you both could use a proper meal." Over breakfast, Zara shared more of her story. She and her husband Thomas had moved west from Illinois 2 years prior, drawn by the promise of land and opportunity. They'd built a small ranch, and life had been hard but good until Thomas fell ill last winter. Pneumonia had taken him just weeks before Emma's birth, leaving Zara to manage alone. "I was doing all right," she said softly, bouncing Emma on her knee. "The ranch was starting to turn a profit. Then those men came." Her voice faltered, Nathan's jaw tightened. "Jenkins' gang, most likely. They've been hitting isolated homesteads all through this territory. Law can't seem to catch up to them." "I don't even know where I was going," Zara admitted. "Just away, somewhere safe for Emma." Nathan considered her words, his storm-gray eyes thoughtful. "I'm headed to Silver Creek once I'm done tracking these mustangs. Got family there. My sister and her husband run the general store. It's a decent town, growing steady, might be a place to make a fresh start." Hope flickered within Zara's chest for the first time in days. "How far?" "About a week's ride," Nathan answered. "You're welcome to travel with me if you'd like. No pressure either way, but 2 traveling together is safer than 1, especially with little Emma there." The offer hung in the air between them, genuine and without expectation. Zara studied the man before her, this stranger who had appeared like a miracle in the desert, with life-giving water when all seemed lost. "I'd be grateful," she said finally, "though I have nothing to offer in return." Nathan shook his head. "Not looking for payment, madam, just wouldn't sit right, leaving a woman and baby to fend for themselves out here." That afternoon, Nathan showed Zara the herd of wild horses he'd been tracking. They stood at a distance, watching the magnificent creatures drink from a hidden waterhole nestled among rocks. "Planning to catch a few for my brother-in-law's stables," Nathan explained. He trains them for the stage company. Zara watched a dappled mare nuzzle her foal, feeling a kinship with the animal's protective stance. They're beautiful, so free. Nathan glanced at her. Freedom's a precious thing worth fighting for. Something in his tone suggested personal experience, but Zara didn't pry. They all had their stories out here in the West, some meant to be shared. Others kept close to the heart. The next morning, Nathan caught 2 of the mustangs with remarkable skill and patience. Zara watched in fascination as he worked with the spirited animals, his voice low and soothing as he gained their trust bit by bit. "My pa was Cherokee," he explained when he caught her watching. "Taught me horses respond better to respect than force. Learned most everything I know from him." By midday, they had broken camp and begun their journey towards Silver Creek. Nathan had fashioned a more comfortable riding arrangement for Zara and Emma, using his bedroll to create a padded seat on Duster's broad back. The newly caught mustangs followed on leads behind them as Nathan rode alongside on his second horse, a sturdy buckskin named Chief. The first 2 days passed uneventfully, with Nathan setting an easy pace that wouldn't tax Zara's still recovering strength. He seemed to know exactly when to stop for rest, anticipating Emma's needs almost as intuitively as Zara herself. In the evenings, he shared stories of his travels across the territories, painting vivid pictures of mountains and plains that made Zara momentarily forget their harsh surroundings. On the 3rd night, as they camped beside a small creek, Zara found the courage to ask about his past. "You know most of my story," she said as they sat by the fire after Emma had fallen asleep. "But I know very little of yours. What brought you out to these parts alone?" Nathan was silent for a long moment, poking at the fire with a stick. "Was a cavalry scout during the war," he finally said. "After, couldn't seem to settle in one place. The open country suited me better than town life. And your family, besides your sister in Silver Creek?" A shadow crossed his features. "Lost my parents 10 years back. Raid on our homestead near the Oklahoma Territory. I was away scouting for the Army." His voice grew quieter. "By the time I returned, it was too late." Zara's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry." Nathan nodded, accepting her sympathy without words. "Been on my own since, mostly. Visit my sister Julia when I can. Her husband David's a good man. They have 2 boys who think their Uncle Nathan walks on water." A smile touched his lips at this. "They're lucky to have you," Zara said softly. Their eyes met across the flames, and something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of shared loss and resilience. "We should rest," Nathan said, breaking the moment. "Long day ahead tomorrow." The following morning brought new challenges as dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Nathan eyed them with concern as they packed up camp. "Storm's coming," he observed. "We need to find better shelter than what we can rig up out here." By midday, the wind had picked up, driving stinging particles of dust before it. Emma grew fussy, disturbed by the changing weather. Nathan led them toward a line of rocky outcroppings in the distance, where he hoped to find a natural windbreak or cave. "There," he pointed as they drew closer. "Looks like an overhang that might give us some protection." The first heavy raindrops began to fall as they reached the rock formation. Nathan quickly helped Zara and Emma dismount and ushered them beneath the stone shelf, while he secured the horses in a protected alcove nearby. The storm hit with sudden ferocity, sheets of rain turning the desert floor into flowing rivulets. Lightning cracked across the sky, followed by booming thunder that made Emma wail in fear. Zara held her daughter close, trying to comfort her as water cascaded down the rocks around them. Nathan returned, soaked to the skin but carrying their essential supplies. "It's a good spot," he reassured them, shaking water from his hat. "Should hold until this passes." He worked quickly to arrange their blankets on the dry ground under the overhang, creating a makeshift nest for Zara and Emma. Then he built a small fire near the opening, shielding it from the wind and rain with his body until the flames caught. As night fell, the storm showed no signs of abating. Their shelter, while adequate, was cramped. Nathan sat at the edge, his broad shoulders blocking much of the wind that occasionally gusted toward them. Despite his efforts to hide it, Zara could see him shivering as his wet clothes slowly dried by the fire's meager heat. "Nathan," she said firmly, "you'll catch your death sitting there. There's room here beside us." He hesitated, propriety warring with practicality. "Wouldn't be proper." Zara raised an eyebrow. "I think we're well past worrying about appearances. Besides, Emma could use the extra warmth." This argument seemed to convince him, and Nathan carefully arranged himself on the blankets beside them, maintaining a respectful distance while still close enough to share body heat. Emma, to Zara's surprise, immediately reached for him, tiny fingers grasping at his shirt. "She likes you," Zara observed. Nathan's expression softened as he gently touched Emma's small hand. "Smart kid, knows who's on her side." Eventually, Emma drifted to sleep between them, creating an unexpected intimacy in their shared watch over her. The storm raged outside, but within their rocky shelter, Zara felt a sense of security she hadn't experienced since Thomas's death. "Never thought I'd be grateful for a desert storm," she murmured, watching Nathan's profile in the firelight. He turned to look at her, question in his eyes. "If not for this weather, we'd have kept moving," she explained. "And I wouldn't have seen how good you are with her." She nodded toward Emma. "Most men wouldn't know what to do with a baby." Nathan's lips curved slightly. "Had some practice with my nephews when they were small. Besides, she makes it easy. Brave little thing, just like her mother." The compliment warmed Zara more than the fire. "I don't feel brave. Most days I'm terrified." "That's what courage is," Nathan replied, "being scared but doing what needs doing anyway." They talked late into the night as the storm gradually subsided, sharing pieces of themselves neither had intended to reveal. Nathan spoke of his dreams to someday have his own horse ranch. Zara admitted her fear of failing Emma, of not being enough for her daughter. "You crossed a desert to keep her safe," Nathan said when she expressed this doubt. "Don't think Emma could ask for more than that kind of love." Morning brought clear skies and a changed landscape. The desert had been transformed overnight, with shallow pools reflecting the sunrise and tiny desert flowers already pushing through the damp soil, seizing their rare opportunity to bloom. "Deserts full of surprises," Nathan remarked as they prepared to resume their journey. "All that life just waiting for the right moment," Zara caught his gaze. "Like people sometimes." The days that followed brought them closer to Silver Creek and closer to each other. Nathan began teaching Zara to ride properly on her own, his hands steady at her waist as she gained confidence on horseback. Each evening, he would entertain Emma while Zara prepared their meal, the baby's delighted giggles becoming Zara's favorite sound. 6 days after Nathan had found them in the desert, they crested a ridge to see a valley spread before them, with a small but thriving settlement nestled beside a winding creek that glittered in the sunlight. "Silver Creek," Nathan announced, a note of pride in his voice. "Population 200 and growing. Not fancy, but decent folk mostly." Zara took in the sight the neat rows of buildings, the church steeple rising above the rest, the scattered homesteads surrounding the town center. After the isolation of the desert, it seemed like a metropolis. "It's beautiful," she whispered, hope and trepidation mingling in her chest. What place would there be for her here? What future could she build for Emma in this unfamiliar town? As if sensing her thoughts, Nathan said, "My sister Julia's got a spare room above the store. She's been after me to find someone to help with the books and minding the counter. She's expecting another baby soon and could use the extra hands." Zara looked at him in surprise. "You're offering me a job, if you want it," he replied, suddenly seeming uncertain. "No obligation. Just thought it might be a good fit while you decide what's next." The consideration behind his offer touched her deeply. "Thank you, I'd be happy to help your sister." Relief crossed his features. "Good, that's good." They made their way down into the valley, approaching the town as afternoon shadows lengthened. Zara grew increasingly self-conscious of her appearance, her tattered dress, her sun-damaged skin, her hair that hadn't seen proper washing in too long. "Nathan." A woman's voice called as they rode down the main street. A pretty, dark-haired woman with Nathan's gray-blue eyes emerged from a large building with Drake and Holden General merchandise painted across its front. Her rounded belly suggested she was well into pregnancy. Nathan dismounted and embraced his sister warmly. "Julia, looking well." Julia's gaze quickly moved to Zara and Emma. Surprise flickered across her face, followed immediately by a welcoming smile. "And who might these lovely ladies be?" "Zara and Emma Holloway," Nathan said, helping Zara down from her horse. "Found them out in the painted desert. Raiders hit their homestead." Understanding and sympathy transformed Julia's expression. "You poor dears, come inside this instant. David," she called toward the store. "Nathan's home, and he's brought guests." The next hours passed in a whirlwind as Julia took charge, ushering Zara and Emma into the living quarters behind the store. A hot bath was prepared, clean clothes provided, and a hearty meal served while Nathan unloaded their meager belongings and tended to the horses with his brother-in-law. "Nathan said you might be willing to help around the store," Julia mentioned as she showed Zara the spare room above the shop. It was small but clean, with a bed, a crib that Julia explained had belonged to her sons, and a window overlooking the creek that gave the town its name. "I'd be grateful for the work," Zara replied. "Though I'm not sure how long we'll stay, I don't want to impose." Julia waved away her concern. "Nonsense. Silver Creek needs more good people, especially women with sense. Too many men and not enough civilizing influence, if you ask me." Her eyes twinkled as she added, "Besides, I've never seen my brother look at anyone the way he looks at you." Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He saved our lives. I owe him everything." "Nathan doesn't do things out of obligation," Julia said gently. "Never has. If he brought you here, it's because he wants you here." That evening, as Emma slept soundly in her new crib, Zara stood by the window watching the creek shine silver in the moonlight. A soft knock at the door drew her attention. Nathan stood in the doorway, freshly shaven and wearing a clean shirt. Without his hat, his dark hair fell across his forehead, making him look younger, less weathered by the elements. "Wanted to check you were settled and all right," he said, remaining respectfully in the hallway. "More than all right," Zara assured him. "Your sister has been incredibly kind." Nathan nodded. "Julia's got a big heart." He hesitated, then added, "I'll be heading out in a few days. Got those Mustangs to deliver to the stage company and some other business to attend to." Disappointment settled in Zara's chest. "Oh, I see." "Should be back in about 3 weeks," he continued, watching her carefully. "That is, if you'll still be here." The question held more than casual inquiry. Zara recognized it for what it was, a hope, perhaps even a plea. "We'll be here," she said softly. "Emma and I both." Something eased in Nathan's expression. "Good, that's real good, Zara." In the days that followed, Zara settled into life in Silver Creek with surprising ease. The work at the store suited her, and Julia proved to be not just an employer but a friend. Emma became the darling of the town, passed from one adoring customer to another while Zara tended the counter. Nathan left as planned, but not before spending every possible moment with Zara and Emma. He showed them around town, introduced them to trusted neighbors, and even brought Zara a small pistol, insisting she learn to use it. "Just in case," he said as he taught her to load and fire the weapon at targets set up behind the store. "World can be dangerous. Woman should know how to protect herself and her own." The day of his departure arrived too quickly. As he saddled Chief and prepared to ride out, Zara stood nearby, Emma on her hip as always. "Thank you," she said, the words inadequate for all he'd done. "For the water, for everything." Nathan adjusted his saddle, avoiding her eyes. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Zara disagreed. "Not anyone, just you." He looked at her then, something unspoken in his gaze. For a moment she thought he might say more, might acknowledge the connection that had grown between them. Instead, he simply touched the brim of his hat and mounted his horse. "Take care of each other," he said. "I'll be back before you know it." The 3 weeks of Nathan's absence stretched interminably. Zara threw herself into work, learning every aspect of the store's operation and suggesting improvements that impressed both Julia and David. Emma thrived in their new community, growing stronger and more active each day. Yet Zara found herself watching the road leading into town, hoping for a glimpse of a familiar figure on horseback. At night, she would stand by her window, remembering the storm and the closeness they had shared beneath the rocky overhang. "He'll be back," Julia assured her repeatedly. Nathan always keeps his word. 23 days after his departure, Zara was restocking shelves when the store's bell jingled. She turned, expecting another customer, and instead found Nathan standing in the doorway, trail dust on his clothes but a smile breaking across his face at the sight of her. "You're back," she said, unable to keep the joy from her voice. "Told you I would be," he replied, removing his hat. His eyes swept over her, taking in the new dress Julia had helped her sew and the healthy flush in her cheeks. "Town life suits you." Before she could respond, Emma crawled at top speed from behind the counter, making a beeline for Nathan with delighted babbling. Without hesitation, he scooped her up, tossing her gently in the air and earning a peal of laughter. "Miss me, little lady?" he asked, settling her on his hip in a mirror of how Zara always carried her. "She's been watching the door every day," Julia commented as she emerged from the storeroom. She embraced her brother, then tactfully announced, "David needs help unloading some supplies. I'll take Emma and leave you two to catch up." Alone in the store, an awkward silence fell between Zara and Nathan. There was so much to say, yet neither seemed to know where to begin. "I brought something for you," Nathan finally said, reaching into his saddlebag. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to Zara. "Saw it and thought of you." Inside lay a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a water droplet, suspended on a fine chain. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, touching it gently. "Reminded me of the day we met," Nathan explained, his voice rough with emotion. "How you insisted Emma drink first, even though you were dying of thirst yourself." Zara looked up at him, finding his gaze intense and unwavering. "I think about that day often," she admitted. "How different our lives would be if you hadn't found us." "Been thinking too," Nathan said, taking a step closer. "About what I want in this life. Spent years wandering, never staying anywhere long, but lately." He paused, gathering his courage. "Lately, I've been wondering if maybe it's time to plant some roots, if the right reason came along." Zara's heart quickened. "And has it?" "The right reason?" Nathan reached out, his calloused fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Think it might have wandered into the desert with a baby on her hip." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. "I have nothing to offer you, Nathan. No land, no money, don't need those things," he interrupted softly. "Just need you and Emma if you'll have me, bought a parcel of land outside town. Good grazing, strong creek running through it. Could build something there, together." The word hung between them, together. A promise, a future, a home. "I'm not asking for an answer today," Nathan continued when she remained silent, emotion overwhelming her. "Just wanted you to know where I stand." "Take all the time you need." Zara found her voice at last. "I don't need time, Nathan. I've known since you gave us your water when we had nothing to give in return. You saved us not because you wanted something, but because it was the right thing to do." She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "That's the kind of man I want in my life, in Emma's life," Nathan's eyes brightened. "That a yes, Zara Holloway?" "Yes," she whispered. "That's a yes." His arms encircled her, strong and gentle as they had been that first day in the desert. When his lips found hers, Zara felt like a desert flower blooming after the rain-dormant hope, suddenly bursting into vibrant life. 1 year later, Zara stood on the porch of their newly completed ranch house, watching Nathan demonstrate to a toddling Emma how to approach one of the gentler Mustangs in their growing herd. The little girl's delighted squeals carried across the paddock as the horse nuzzled her outstretched hand. The silver water droplet pendant still hung around Zara's neck, a constant reminder of their beginning. She touched it reflexively, then rested her hand on the slight swell of her belly where their second child grew. From desperate wandering to found family, from parched desert to flowing creek, life had a way of leading you to water just when you needed it most. Sometimes, Zara reflected as Nathan looked up and caught her eye with a smile that still made her heart skip, that water came in the form of a canteen offered by a stranger who would become everything. "Come see, Mama," Emma called, waving excitedly. Zara descended the porch steps and crossed to her family, the one she'd fought to protect, and the one she'd found when all seemed lost. As Nathan's arm slipped around her waist, she leaned into his strength, no longer the desperate woman wandering the desert, but a woman who had found her home.